This week's coursework focuses on the importance of securing first-hand market data about your customers. This is also known as primary research. As part of this week's work, we'll explore techniques for getting customer feedback that will boost the odds of turning your idea into a success. Our objectives this week include the following. First, we'll define primary market research. Next, we'll identify appropriate customer discovery tools to define customer and market needs, problems, and entrepreneurial opportunities. We'll then look at examples of successful customer research techniques. And finally, we'll explore some of the tools required to gather and apply research to a marketing campaign. Market research is an excellent tool that helps you identify customer satisfaction levels and needs. Its value, however, extends beyond this, and it also allows you to better recognize opportunities by creating a clearer picture of how your value proposition aligns with your customers' goals. You may already be familiar with some of the research practices used by marketers to understand and define their customers and prospects. These tools include focus groups, surveys, concept testing, minimal viable products, or MVPs, market analysis, segmentation, and many others. All are time-tested ways of better understanding your customers and your market opportunities. However, when conducted by professional research or consulting firms, these techniques can be very expensive and can quickly drain an entrepreneur's budget. Many managers assume that they must hire professionals to conduct these activities in order to feel confident with the data, and as a result, market research techniques are often overlooked or skipped entirely, especially by small and medium-sized business owners. In fact, you may be wondering how you can conduct market research on a limited or non-existent budget. But fortunately, you can. With the power and tools available on the web, you don't need the budget of Apple or Pepsi to conduct market research. Many of these techniques can be completed with very limited funds, as long as you clearly identify the specific information you need, and then design very clear questions that help you make critical business decisions. As you think about your company, you may have already defined the information that you need to know about your customers and prospects, either explicitly on paper or at least in your head. However, it's important to note that the essential element that separates successful companies from those that are struggling is their ability to turn information about customers' needs into knowledge that can be used to make sound business decisions. Information and knowledge are vastly different. Simple facts alone cannot help you grow your business. As an entrepreneur, you need to turn those facts, the raw data, into knowledge by adding your own analysis and research, and then use this knowledge to create value for your business. If you cannot use the knowledge effectively, for example, you collect the data but ignore the findings because you either don't have time to make the required changes or you don't have the bandwidth to do it properly, then conducting research is not worth your time nor your effort because it won't help your business grow. In fact, it might actually harm your business because raw data used improperly can lead to very poor business decisions. I say this not to discourage you from conducting research and creating knowledge, but to emphasize the importance of using this knowledge that you've created to benefit your business. Let me share one example of a client who used the research findings from a survey we conducted to save his company from going out of business. During the height of the recession in 2007, a manufacturer whom I'd worked with for several years was gravely concerned that his prices were simply too high. He had drawn this conclusion based on the fact that sales were down. He brought my consulting firm in to help him because he was seriously considering lowering his prices and needed support in deciding what his next step should be to generate revenue and, of course, to stay in business. After hearing his concerns, we decided to survey his customer base to better understand what was happening, rather than assuming we knew what had caused the change in behavior. One of the most important questions that we included in this brief survey was, if you can choose one factor only, what's most influential in your decision to purchase a product? And the options we gave them were, in this order, price, product quality, customization of product, customer service, and then other, basically a fill-in-the-blank option. The results might surprise you, as it shocked this business owner. 40% of his customers stated that product quality was their number one criteria for buying from him. 33% stated customization of the product was their top choice, and only 16% stated price. Now let's think about the implications here. Customers were clearly not using price as the primary factor in their buying decision. They valued the high-quality product my client offered and the fact that the products could be customized. Quality and price are very tightly integrated, especially in the market they served. Their customer list included a large number of highly successful science and technology-based companies like NASA and Bose. However, we didn't stop there. We decided to further investigate the 16% of customers who stated that price was the driver for their decision. It turned out this was a different market segment, comprised of small craft businesses. For example, people who made jewelry who purchased his product. These customers were incredibly price sensitive, but they only represented a small segment of his market. Therefore, the question became, what should he do about price? Since he had two very different target markets. He was attracting crafters and engineers and scientists. Well, we know that when prices are cut, there's usually an assumption that quality has also decreased. If my client had indeed cut his prices, not only would he have lost a nice profit margin, but he would have likely also harmed his reputation for offering a high-quality product. Given that customization and quality were significantly more important than price for the majority of his target market, he proceeded to do the opposite of his original intention. He actually raised his prices. And in the end, he didn't lose a single customer. And as he changed his message to focus more on quality and customization, his business began to grow again. While I do need to point out the fact that if there was a stronger competitor in the market, raising his prices might not have been the right answer. Nonetheless, it's critical to understand the dynamics of the marketplace using data and knowledge rather than making assumptions. My client used this experience as a valuable lesson in listening to his customers. You must always be aware what your customers want and understand what your competitors are doing and how they might react to the actions you take, because all of these actions impact your customers' decision-making processes. Finally, It's also important to note that if my client had been in a sales meeting with these customers, they almost certainly would have told him price was a critical factor in the decision-making process. And while that is part of the negotiation process, it's not part of the research process. And because the survey was anonymous and run by a third party, in this case, my business firm, the answers we received were not part of a sales negotiation exchange. So how's my client doing? He survived the downturn in the economy, raised his prices, and his cash flow and balance sheet look much stronger today because of a variety of important questions we asked his customers, including the one factor that most influenced their decision to purchase products from his company.